Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. We're halfway through the meteorological winter, but a lot of us haven't yet seen a single flake of snow. Is that likely to change as we go through the next 2 weeks? Well, to try and answer the question, I'll start off by taking a look at the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. The animation runs from 18 GMT, Friday the 14th. At the outset, it's dry over much of the UK, but there is some rain just in the far north. What's happening is there's an area of high pressure sitting over the country, and in the short term that declines southeastwards into continental Europe, and it allows some patchy spells of rain as more of an Atlantic influence develops for a time. This is 06 GMT on Sunday the 16th, and there's a little bit of rain there in the south and the west of the UK, and perhaps some longer outbreaks pushing southeastwards across the northern half of the country. Those tend to fade away though quite quickly, and then high pressure builds back once again. However, as we go through the first half of next week, there are some signs of changes on this animation at least, which is based on the GFS. The high pressure starts to become centred to the west of the UK, and if we look to the north, we see colder air beginning to move southwards across much of the country, and it looks on this animation at least as though it's just a glancing blow. It's really just affecting the eastern half of the UK, possibly bringing a few wintry showers to coastal counties for a time. But by Friday the 21st, when the sequence finishes, it's a high pressure dominated scenario once again. So all in all, the day-to-day details will be changing, but the key point to make is that high pressure continues to have a good deal of influence throughout the first week, if this model run is correct. I think it's also just worth taking a look at the air temperature profile. This animation is showing values at about 1,500 metres above sea level. It also starts at 18 GMT, Friday the 14th. At the outset, there's greens over the UK here. That's indicating relatively mild air for this time of year. Now, if I run the animation, what we see is not a great deal of changes in the short term. A little bit of colder air gets into the mix for a time, then it turns milder again. But by Wednesday the 19th and Thursday the 20th, this much colder Arctic air begins to sweep southwards. As I say, it looks as though it's mainly going to be affecting the eastern half of Britain. I'll just continue this through to the end. And what we see is that cold air gets pushed away eastwards into continental Europe as high pressure returns from the west. By the end of this animation, the colder air is just really still flirting with East Anglia and the far southeastern corner. So if the colder incursion does happen, it looks like being a relatively short one. Now, what that means in terms of 2 metre temperatures for ones that we experience down at the ground level, just going to bring up a few charts to show. 15 GMT on Saturday the 15th, so maximum temperatures according to the GFS model, 6s, 7s, 8s, a little bit milder than the southwest, so very close to the seasonal average. Jumping forwards to Monday, if anything, it's a little bit milder, now into double figures in part of the south and the west there, a little cooler as you head northwards. I think it's also just worth noting that with high pressure continuing to be the main feature of UK's weather for the first week, there is a risk on some nights of frost and fog developing. It's going to vary according to cloud cover, wind strength, and I think the focus for the frost really is on the southern half of the UK. An example chart here from the UKV model is for 06 GMT, Tuesday the 18th, has temperatures a few degrees below freezing or around about freezing in much of England and Wales, so quite a widespread frost if it's correct on Tuesday morning. Fog as well is a possibility on some nights, as I say, with high pressure being dominant. Again, this is from the UKV model. 06 GMT Tuesday the 18th. On these charts, the dark shading indicates where the fog is. I wouldn't pay too much attention to the details as ever at this range, but it's just to give an indication of how things could develop. Then coming back to the daytime temperatures, Wednesday the 19th. Across the UK, it's relatively mild, still 9s, 10s, several degrees above the late January average. But by Thursday the 20th, as that cold Arctic air moves southwards, the 2 metre temperatures are starting to take a dip. 4s, 5s, 6s now quite widely. So I think just to really summarise the temperature trend through the first week, it's quite varied. It's going to be fluctuating around the average. There will be frost and fog on some nights, and to an extent the risk of frost and fog is going to be determined by wind strength, as I say, as well as cloud cover. And the chart here from the Mogret's model is for London. It's showing forecast wind gust speeds as we go through the first week. So it's really very calm to begin with, but on some days the breeze picks up 15 to 20 miles an hour being shown there. And when that happens, it will be having the effect of reducing that risk of frost developing through the nights, also keeping the fog away. Perhaps just towards the end there, as we go towards the 19th and 20th, it could be turning windier. Looking at the comparable chart for Glasgow, as I said, the risk of frost generally looks to be lower in the north, and this is one of the reasons. It's forecast to be windier, 20, 30, 40 miles an hour wind speeds there on some days. Nothing at all unusual for this time of the year, but more than enough to stop frost and fog forming. Rainfall. Not much to say about these charts, but the reason I'm using them is because it's not often that you'll see ones exactly like this. On the left, it's days 0 to 5 accumulated rainfall, and on the right, it's days 0 to 10. Just take a look at those. 0 millimetres on both charts over much of the UK. You really have to go up to the far northwest to find significant amounts of rain. And even there, the 10-day totals are only around 20 to 50 millimetres, which isn't that much for this time of the year, but it's completely dry in large parts of the UK. Very unusual to see that really at any time of the year, I would think, but particularly in January. So, do the other deterministic models support a similar scenario at the end of the first week, this high pressure dominated one? Just as a reminder, here is the GFS, Friday the 21st of January. The GFS data was used to create the animations. By then, the high pressure's building back in from the west. The cold air really just restricted to the eastern counties of England. The Canadian model shows something similar. The high pressure's building back and the cold air is being shunted into continental Europe. The German icon model still has some cold air just into East Anglia, but the broad scale pattern is virtually the same. The ECM model, this brings the colds a little bit further westwards at the same time, but once more that high pressure's building across the UK. Finally, the UK Met Office model, the same story. Therefore, I think good agreement between the deterministic models, high pressure having a lot of influence at the end of the first week. There could still be some of that colder upper level air in the eastern counties of Britain, but it will be being moved away eastwards. So a mostly dry picture, risk of nighttime frost and fog. Temperatures during the days starting to probably become close to the average once again. Well, that covers the first week, but what about the second week? As ever, it's a case of looking at the ensemble data to try and identify the trends and the probabilities rather than the forecast specifics. So 16-day GEFS plot for London and southern England. Across the top, it shows upper air temperatures, 1,500 metres above sea level approximately. The thick purple line is the ensemble mean, the thick black line, the 30-year norm, And you can see the purple line there's above the black line to begin with. Later on it dips a little below it. But to summarise, I would say that it's a close to average picture when looking at the second week as a whole. Later on, perhaps there are an increasing number of runs which bring significantly colder air down to southern England. But at this point, they are still a minority. It is something to keep an eye on though. Rainfall, shown across the bottom, well, there are very, very few spikes on this chart. A very dry picture being forecast according to the GEFS through the second week even. Just a chance later on perhaps of a growing risk of rain, but at this range I wouldn't really take too much notice to those spikes which are showing, because even towards the end of this plot there are only a few of them and they're not very big. The snow row, so if there is any precipitation, will it be falling as snow rather than rain? It actually increases to 11 towards the very end there. The maximum value it can have is 33, so roughly a 1 in 3 chance of any precipitation falling from the sky falling as snow rather than just rain. A low to moderate chance, and perhaps offering some support really to the suggestion of an increasing number of runs bringing colder air southwards towards the end of this forecast period, but still the number of them is a relatively small minority in the ensemble. Taking a look at the scene for Glasgow, upper air temperatures across the top there. Similar story, close to average over the second week as a whole. Precipitation, well, there are more spikes here going through the second week, but generally it's a relatively dry picture, certainly compared to the norm for this time of the year. I think it's suggesting there will be a good deal of days where it does stay dry, but some rain at times. The snow row here, the values are relatively low. In actual fact, the maximum is 9, which is slightly lower than the London one, which reached 11. But once more, I think it's suggesting a low to moderate chance of there being any snow falling. And as I always point out, snow row indicates the chance of snow falling, and it doesn't give any guidance towards accumulations. Looking at the 2 metre temperatures, so going back down to London and southern England to see whether there's a disconnect really between those temperatures aloft at 1500 metres and the ones which we experience down at the surface. There often can be when high pressure is dominating the scene, because the calm conditions close to the ground allow temperatures to drop quite quickly. In this case, at the present time, the GEFS is signalling that the likelihood is for temperatures to be close to or above the 30-year norm. The light greens are dominating. Those are rather mild runs, 6 to 10 Celsius maximum. The caveat which I'm going to put into the pot at this stage is that the possibility of fog holding down temperatures on some days is quite high. So it may well be that the GEFS isn't modelling that scenario particularly well. Therefore, I've put question marks next to the slightly above average. It could be that we end up with some chilly days in southern and central Britain. Taking a look at the picture in the northwest of the UK, Glasgow again, fluctuating around the average is how I've described this. On some days, the darker green becomes dominant, the runs which are going for maximums of 1 to 5 Celsius. But there's a lot of light green as well in these columns, which 6 to 10 Celsius. And of course, as you head northwards, the average is going to be lower than it is in the south of the UK. All in all, nothing particularly cold showing here. Towards the very end, perhaps with the amount of dark green increasing to well above 50% and a little bit of blue showing there. Once more, it's pointing towards the likelihood of I would say a growing likelihood of it turning colder towards the end, but still a relatively low one, perhaps a 20 or 30% chance according to the number of runs in the ensemble, which are bringing colder air southwards again towards the end of week 2. Pressure, the data table here is for York. It's again from the GEFS and is valid for the next 16 days. Orange and red, even yellow, those are the colours which are indicating pressure above the average this time of the year. High pressure, therefore, is dominant even through the second week. It does tend to weaken later on. The amount of orange and red in the columns reduces, the amount of yellows increases, there's even a little bit of green and blue, but it's a higher than average pressure likelihood continuing through the second week. Where's that pressure going to be centred? Where's the high pressure going to be centred? The anomaly chart here for days 10 to 15 gives some clues. The key is the positive anomaly, and it's strongest to the west of the UK. There's a negative anomaly as we head eastwards into central and eastern parts of Europe. Therefore, high pressure may well be centred over the UK or to the west. There's good support for that according to a lot of the individual runs in the ensemble. The postage stamp plots are an excellent way of viewing the ensemble data. This one is showing pressure patterns on the 28th of January. Each one of those stamps is the forecast from one of the individual runs. The key takeout here is the majority of them keep high pressure close to the UK, and there are a lot of variations on where the high pressure will be centred. In general terms, though, it looks like being to the south, the southwest, or to the west of the United Kingdom. A number of them have it building northwards in the mid-Atlantic, and those are the runs which are really supportive of a colder scenario developing towards the end of the forecast period. A minority at this stage, though, but something to keep a close eye on as we head through the coming days. So, to summarise, week one, mainly dry, although some patchy rain is likely, especially in the north and west. The risk of fog and frost varies, and it will be mostly focused on the southern half of the UK. Temperatures during the days often close to or above the average, but where fog lingers, it remains cold. Towards the end of the week, it could turn colder in all areas, but particularly the east, and there is a chance of scattered wintry showers in eastern coastal counties. Week two, high pressure quickly builds back in from the west and remains influential, although it could start to weaken later on. Therefore, a good deal of dry weather is expected, but perhaps it becomes more changeable in the north. Temperatures fluctuate around the average. Once again, there is a chance of frost and fog on some nights. The alternative scenario here, which I'm giving a chance of about 25%, is for it to become significantly colder through the second week. Well, there we have it. I started by asking whether the snow drought will be broken, and the answer, I think, for most of us is probably not during the next 2 weeks. There could be some wintry showers for a time in eastern coastal counties, and then there's that 25% chance or thereabouts of it turning colder again later on. But all in all, I don't think it looks too promising on the snow front. Nonetheless, this is a very notable spell of weather in different ways. The ongoing dryness, the domination of high pressure, unusual in the UK at this time of the year in particular. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful and enjoyed it. If you did, then please remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. Thanks for watching now. Bye.